Also,
There we are.
Gregory on YouTube, thank you for being here. Also, Dieter over on Facebook, thank you. Nice to see you here. And actually, I forgot to give you a little yellow border here. I'll take care of that in a second here, Sev. So if you're looking at the broadcast, I'll fix your camera slightly. But while I'm doing that, let's say hello to everyone here. So, how you doing, Sev?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. We have update 30 released this week, so a whole bunch of new content and things for everyone to play. We'll be showing that on the stream here. We've been showing it on twitch.tv/LocherStream as well. So if you're streaming, hope you're having a good weekend doing that. And we've got a lot of new content. So we've got plenty of things to talk about, I think. From the Q&A, it's a fairly open Q&A. Pretty much anything you want to ask us about, we'll do our best to answer. We can't, of course, promise. We can't promise answers, and we can't necessarily promise good answers, but we can certainly promise that we will try to provide good answers to the best of our
My
ability
goal is
here.
to
So.
give interesting answers, hopefully be informative, and say at least one thing that the team will have to correct me on later on.
Pretty much, pretty much.
That's pretty much like what we're looking for.
Nice. So it is pretty open though for the community, and I guess while we sort of give people a chance to get brave and ask us some questions and that sort of thing, let's talk a little bit about Update 30. Went out this week. So far, so pretty much so good. We have a small bug fix patch set for middle of next week, but not too much in that. Mostly related to some kind of balance tweaks on the new raid and things like that. So. Overall, Update 30 is looking pretty good, and we're kind of full speed ahead on the next thing.
I really like that the raid is going back kind of and looking at some of the history, and then you can kind of see how stuff played out. So that's really exciting. And yeah, I'm excited for that. Like I'm really excited for 30, but with stuff happening at the end of the month, like I don't even think that we've announced that there are legendary servers coming. Have we?
We've kind of hinted at it, right? But yes, so we can actually talk a little bit about that. We even have names for them, don't we? It's
Yeah.
Shadowfax and Treebeard.
Shadowfax is going to be the fast one where we're going to ramp up XP and then we're going to do updates faster. And then Treebeard will be the slow one where because people love like exploring every little nook and corner, so it will be reduced somewhat, not ridiculously so, but it will be slower. And we're actually going to do the updates of when new content will come slower, so they have more time to spend at each one. Because with our current legendary servers, it's like they're half of the people are like, oh my god, when's the next update? And half the people are like, oh no, not yet. So we're trying to do that. The other thing is
Yeah.
that this will be the first place where the players can do the difficulty stuff. So you'll be able to start on the legendary server with a whole bunch of other people at the same time, and you'll be able to choose your difficulty on the legendary server first.
Yeah. All right, let me actually do one quick thing. I gotta move my Google Windows over to a different side so that I stop your camera from freezing if I call up a web page. Because I wanted to call up a web page. I wanted to call up our legendary server web page for that'll be going live probably later this month, being worked on right now. And we do have a little bit of info. I wanted to call it up so that we could talk. So basically, the way it's going to work on this landscape difficulty is you'll speak to an NPC, and a window will open up, and you'll have difficulty 1 to 9, and then a 10th, essentially, which is normal. You know, normal landscape difficulty if you want to opt into that, or be that by default, or go back to it, for example. And then it goes hard, dangerous, deadly, deadly +1, deadly +2, deadly +3, etc., all the way up to deadly +6. And presumably deadly means more difficult.
Yeah, so we're not
Yeah,
expecting people to run on the deadlies. The
yeah,
deadlies are stuff like for groups to do or for like streamers who like have super characters that are going to be like, okay, we're going to try to play on Deadly 6 and see how bad it is.
yeah.
So we're like mostly you're going to stay in the first three difficulty ranges, especially if you're considering on soloing. I was soloing on difficulty 2 and doing fairly well, but if I multi-pulled, there was definitely problems.
Yeah.
Now we did it with some really good gear and some average gear, and the average gear players doing on difficulty 2 will definitely have to be careful. The nice thing is when the eye appears, it kind of gives you an idea of when things will ramp up. so you can make better decisions rather than having just, you'll have a idea that stuff is happening.
Yeah,
So,
and you're talking about basically kind of an Eye of Sauron effect that will show up. I believe that is difficulty 3 and higher. So essentially, once you start with the deadly levels, you'll start seeing that. I think that's the case, something like that.
yeah.
Unless it's deadly
And
plus 3 or higher. I can't remember which, but yeah.
no, I think it's earlier than that, because
Okay.
once you get past the rank 3,
Mhm.
it really is meant like you'll want to either group, or you have some build idea and equipment combo that is just going to surprise us. That said, I'll say, like, no one's going to do difficulty 5 on solo, and that there will be people that are going to be attempting to do that just to prove me wrong.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, if you do begin, then if you like start at a let's see, a higher level difficulty prior to reaching level 11, so that means everything from hard all the way up to deadly. If you start and keep at that difficulty level, you get rewarded for hitting levels 50 and 130. They're basically titles. There are 4 titles available per class, 2 for reaching the hard plus difficulty at level 50 and 130, 2 for reaching deadly plus difficulty at 50 and 130. But you do have to start before you hit level 11. And
Yes.
be consistent about that. You can't drop down. I mean, you could drop down to hard to get the hard if you want, right? But you can't say bop it ever to normal or anything like that through that experience and get that title.
The only one that counts are the first 3. So let's say that you want to try +5, right? Like rank 5. You can go up to rank 5 and drop down to rank 3. You just can never drop below rank 3 in order to get the title.
Yeah.
The other piece of feedback that the players on the forums have said is, like, this sounds cool, but titles aren't exciting to me. I kind of want more. The problem is I can't execute on like more cosmetic rewards right now, because we're right in Gundabad and the team is like racing, it's like trying to change. So what we'll probably do is, I would imagine that some of these titles will have cosmetic rewards attached to them, but that won't come at opening. That would be something come later, because I can't change our schedule right now. My guess is cloaks, maybe a mount, but don't quote me on that. But I think cool cloaks to show off your achievement is something that would be really cool. So you can be like, oh yeah, and then like, so we're looking into like better things for achievements. It looks like we've got a lot of questions, and I've been talking about stuff I want to talk about.
Yeah, I figured as long as we got a bit of news here, we've got an hour here, so we got plenty of time to get at everyone's questions. This is kind of the new hotness and all that, so I thought it was worth, kind of talking a little bit about that. Before we move on, though, I did want to make sure that since we're talking a little bit about specifics, you do actually get a little bit of a XP bonus for running these higher level difficulties as well, and that is largely to offset the extra time to kill, things like that you were going to experience. But if you're a particularly good player or fast player or efficient player or whatever, you might be able to take some advantage of that extra XP, particularly, let's say, on the Shadowfax server or something like that, if that's something you want to do, right? So yeah. There is a little advantage outside of just the titles there, I guess, is what I'm getting at, for those who want it. All right, let's start delving into that chat. You want to start over with Twitch? Is there something you wanted to maybe call out right away?
Let's see. Okay, someone was asking about, so one of the things that some ground rules. One is getting into class balance issues to the nitty gritty is going to be too consuming. Love talking about it, but like that will derail us. Also, anything having to do with monetization, like pricing and stuff, I wouldn't want to do without talking to marketing. So I tend not to try to comment on that. So there's somebody being able to transfer multiple characters at once, and like that I understand where that's coming from, but I'm probably not going to talk about stuff like that. I will bring that up because it's a concept, and that's not really something that this stream is for. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
New character customization options is something that we're working on. We've definitely seen the concepts and some of the in-game stuff, and so there's definitely things coming. probably this year. Maybe if the schedule gets too demanding next year, but like early next year. But like, so I have seen in-game stuff, but as people probably know, like seeing the initial exciting stuff and actually bring it to fruition are two totally different things. So I'm excited because I get to see the art early, but I want to be careful to give full credit to how long it takes to go from that stage to actually looking good in game. We are looking at raising the hourly instance lock limit time. Right now, I don't know that we need to do it, but we're looking at server stuff to beat lag.
Yeah, last I had
Right
heard
now.
is there was last I had heard was that 10 instance per hour limit was about as high as engineering was comfortable with. That's the last I had heard, and that was
We're
not that long
revisiting
ago.
that, and
Yeah.
once we're trying some Evernight stuff
Yeah.
this week in order to end lag. So I guess one of the things is there's several kinds of lags. There's I'm lagging trying to move from place to place, like load screen lag. I'm rubber banding as I'm moving through the landscape because I've crossed some boundary that actually is moving me from server to server. And then there's things around me are lagging in the same space that everyone else is. Those are very different kinds of lags and target different kinds of servers. Meaning one is a master server problem, the other is instance problems. So we're trying to figure out like which we're looking at. We did make some changes to Evernight in order to see if it had an effect on the loading issue. So we'll be looking at that. The other thing that we're doing is that we are looking at just hardware upgrades. I mean, quite frankly, there have been some. We've had to patch over exploits and in the hardware that has reduced our hardware capabilities, and we are moving towards budgeting out just new servers, especially for some of our big servers. The problem is that acquiring that and going through that process and deploying them is a longer process. I wish I could turn it around in a week, but it's just not. We're talking months. So we're working as hard as we can on that, on lag. And in addition, we're behind the scenes looking at different ways of doing lag. Lag is like outside of delivering you awesome story, lag is our #1 priority right now.
Yeah.
As I said, last night we changed the configuration of Evernight to address stresses on the master server. So that's what we're looking at. And the other thing is that. So for instance, if you're talking about lag in specific parts of the game, that's a different thing than what we did last night. So, but we'll be looking for more and more feedback on that.
Let me ask one from Facebook here. Where are we on the Brawler class?
The early playtest looked pretty cool. The Brawler was awesome. I saw that one of our artists, Kamal, was doing the particle and sound effects for like a cool uppercut move, which looked awesome. And they're doing the concept. One of the things that they're working on, I was working with Jen, and she was talking about concept, and I saw Michelle's stuff, and they're figuring out like exactly like what the cool gauntlets they punch people look like, and overall like what they're looking like, because we're at the stage now where we have to make those decisions. And so we're trying to figure out what's their look so that their heavy armor, has a look and feel all its own. And so we definitely want heavy plates so it feels like heavy armor, but we might have a lighter, like strapped leather look underneath it. But that concept is one thing we were discussing. There was also different kinds of armor pieces that I was talking with, and I'm super excited. But I don't know what direction we're going. I think right now we're going to do basically in different armors for different areas rather than like strict race. So those things are happening. Cool. It's supposed to be a brutal punching style that's a brawlery, and we don't want like a martial art, a flowing martial arts. It's not
Yeah.
like that. It came from the dwarves, and even though other races can learn it, it's like it should look pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So
I guess where it's at technically then is, yeah, we're in that playtest stage where we're moving really from the point where it was all, combat mechanics to combat mechanics with animations and looks and all that. And we're really moving into the look and feel kind of section of all that. So,
yeah.
Sweet. Sweet. And when's that coming out?
For good and bad later in the year.
Yep. All right. I did want to get to a question. I've seen it on really all three. We've had a recent uptick in gold spam issues over on our live game world. So in particular, we've had an issue where the spammers have been compromising accounts and then using those unfortunately compromised accounts to continue spamming. And it's been a bit of a problem, well, for the community and for customer service, and that having to play whack-a-mole on these spammers all weekend long sometimes. So it has been something that's been going on in game a little bit, and we did just kind of get a couple of questions. What are we going to be doing to address that? I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but I could say that CS is well aware of it. They've been working with community and that to the best of our ability to track these things down. We do want to make sure we get the message out, never to follow those links. Unfortunately, that's been it's been leading to some unfortunately compromised accounts when people are following those links, knowingly or unknowingly, finding themselves in a bad place. So please be careful out there. Just report them, and we do have customer service on top of it, doing the best we can. So
one of the things that's happening is, and the reason the gold spam is such a pain, is that there's a player behavior that follows the links. And that causes it to increase, both because they're successful and people's accounts get compromised. And when your account gets compromised and we ban it because it's spamming, recovering the account becomes much more problematic. So one of the things that players can help us for is spread the word. When you see those, like, tell people don't click these. We're not going to put links in our chat, and if it looks like there's a admin saying, hey, here's a code to do, we'll never do that. If you spread the word so that people don't click on it, so they don't get compromised, so they don't become part of the problem, then it will be harder and harder for the spammers to create an exponential problem in terms of that. So that's something that the players can help.
Inevitably, it also does bring up our desire to have two-factor authentication as well as the communities. So hopefully that is something we can do in the future.
Two-factor authentication is something on our long-term plans, nothing short-term to talk about. Let's see. What about legendary items updates? Going well. We're looking into a cool system that will be unified from level 50 up. You'll be able to get these cool. You will find items that you slot into your legendary item, and you can mix and match for different minor effects in addition to the large skill effects that you would expect from the legendary item. So that system is looking cool. We're working on it now. The engineering have the back end tech, and now we're kind of figuring out how the UI is going to work. I think it will be exciting. I think there'll be some player choice there. Like right now, basically you slot in your class stuff and you level it up, and there's not as much player choice. But even though you'll have your class stuff, in addition, there'll be, like, what we hope, if we can get the tech of working, is there'll be sets that you can mix and match to get additional stuff, and all of that. So the legendary items the legendary item system is something that we are right in the middle of, and we have it scoped out, and the whole beginning of the back end tech is done. We're working on the UI. The reason I don't want to bring details is because there are some tech bits that are still in place, and if we find that there's a technical issue, we may have to change the design somewhat. So I don't want people to do something that they feel is promising.
Question about actually the legendary worlds. Are they VIP only? The answer to that is yes. You do need to be a VIP subscriber to access the legendary worlds. What does avatar customization entail? Just new hairs, faces, and such, or idle stances, walking animations, and voices?
Not idle
from YouTube.
Yeah, it's essentially skin tone, different heads, different nose shapes, different lip shapes, different hairs, more color optimizations, more diversity in how you make your character. Hopefully, some new hairstyles. One of the most expensive thing, hair is really hard. Like so, when we're doing hairs, it might not seem like it might. That's something that might go under the radar of like, why don't you have more hairstyles? But they're really hard to get right and they're really time intensive. So we definitely want to have some hair stuff, maybe some updates to the hairs. But like I would expect some, but not like 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
The amount of game development time that has gone into hair technology over the last 30 years, right? I mean, think about that.
uh,
Yeah.
so for the people for landscape difficulty, eventually they'll come to the normal servers too. But landscape difficulty takes a lot of testing, and by bringing them to the two legendary servers first, because they open up early, we can test the early stuff and then go through. Our main concern is that recursively testing the entire game is something that like would require a much bigger team, and so we're going through and playing through, but there might be on some class some specific instance that at a higher difficulty, this solo instance is stops people from playing because there's just something we didn't anticipate. That's my biggest worry about the landscape difficulty, because the players will be like, I can't turn down my landscape difficulty for this solo instance, and I also can't get help for it, and they might be stuck. So that's what we're looking into. But by bringing it to legendary servers, we can kind of focus on the low end content first, and then bring it to the live servers later when we can kind of test later stuff, if that makes sense.
Cool. Will brawlers be able to use beer steins, bar stools, chair legs, and etc. as weapons? Do we want to answer that one?
We're not going to answer that one. No, basically they're gauntlets. But one of the things we were talking about is they do have some effects that they can do and grab for ranged. And we were talking about, well, if the brawler is whipping something at the enemy at range, what would that be? And I would expect that to be cool things that they throw. We don't want to make it lore breaking, so that like we were looking at a chair, but if you're in the middle of a dungeon, throwing a bar stool chair, it might be a little bit
Yeah, that
a
doesn't
little
necessarily make sense. Yeah.
but they tend to carry a, you know, I think that you'll see some stuff that will excite and delight in terms of that.
Yeah.
Um
What about a lower difficulty setting for landscape? What if normal's too hard for you? Or you just
so
don't even want, like, you're just like, I just literally don't want to deal with any of this stuff. What about a
sorry.
peaceful mode or something like that in the future?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
base mode is essentially how you play now.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do difficulty. You don't have to change anything.
Well, no,
As
I think
for,
what they're asking, though, is could we make an even easier difficulty setting? Like, where literally you just don't have to worry about mob content, where you just can wander around or something like that.
we don't have a plan right now to do that because it's fairly easy to get through the game at the base difficulty. In the early levels, I know that there are people who really like casual mode, and that there are some spicy bits for them that they're like, oh, you say that, but then this area is troublesome for me, so I don't want to downgrade or dismiss people who, you know, playing the current game see those spikes in difficulties at places. But no, if we get a lot of player feedback on that, that might be something that we can look at. So for two people in the same fellowship, once you go into actual like groupable content, difficulty turns out. So you don't have to worry about someone going into your raid on a high difficulty and just making the whole thing more difficult. As for the content that is considered solo, or if two people are in it, what'll happen is you can't really, if you run up and hit, your difficulty setting won't interact with someone at higher difficulty. So if you're both attacking the same mob, they'll get hit harder and have to worry about dodging stuff, and you won't.
Interesting. I actually wondered that one myself a little bit, so.
Blonde, you'd be surprised how hard blonde hair and making it rich, colorful without making it seem like bright yellow is to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. He's like, but not a sunshine blonde. The not a sunshine blonde is actually the problem, not making blonde hair. So, but I think that one of the things we can look at is one of the limitations early was that we had basically one. So the way it works is there's kind of a gray scale undertone that gives the shading, and then we put color over it, and that does two things. Really bright colors get grayed down, and really dark colors get lightened up. And in the past, we had to have the thing that like there's only one grayscale. We're kind of looking at doing different things with that. I can't make any promises on that, but that's essentially the technical reasons why that happens.
I know people want us to talk about improved motivating speech, but that's kind of a class, an update 30 class adjustment that I think we would really want to more punt that to the team that more directly works with classwork here, right? So,
yeah, like I said, I love talking about classwork, but I found in the past that one of my weaknesses is I get into starting to talk about classes, and then like 20 minutes of our hour pass about talking about so that's one of the things that I want to kind of avoid talking about that. Overall, though, I think what you're seeing is we want the overly powerful raid-wide buffs reduced, and some of the stuff you've been seeing is our attempts to do that. That's just a direction that we want, and I know it's hard to see some of that happening, but like that some of this what you're seeing is that.
Is the difficulty stuff coming on separate legendary servers or the legendary server that's present at the moment? That would be Anor.
The new legendary server to start. And then we're going to follow by putting it to the live servers. And when we do that, the current legendary server will get it too. The current legendary server is far enough along that I want to see it in the low end content before seeing it further along. So in terms of more difficult 0 to 75 instances, our instance strategy is extra tiers, not individual difficulty settings, because we need the groups to be all on the same page. And the reason for that is if somebody comes in with a high difficulty setting and you're wiping or having problems, there's going to be not everybody has agreed to do that difficulty, if that makes sense. And so it can cause unnecessary social strife. So we want to make sure that the difficulty from, higher end group content is more like, okay, we all agree to do it at this difficulty, and using the landscape difficulty slider to do that is, in our opinion, the wrong approach, because not everyone, you can introduce a difficulty in that, and that one person is having a hard time because they're at difficulty and they're loving it because they like dying a lot because they're a Dark Souls player, right? And the other people are like, oh my god, we're dying a lot, like please turn your difficulty down. And worse is they can't turn their difficulty down without giving up the title. So all the difficulty stuff turns off in group content, the group will be able to choose, which means that the 0 to 75 range would have to be someone going back and providing extra tiers of it. And that's something that we can look at doing post Gundabad as the new legendary servers go up, but it's very time intensive to do that. So I don't want to make promises on that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we can do is really get our class balance people on a stream so they can talk. But keep in mind that like the class balance requires a lot of iteration. So they will release stuff, iterate, release stuff, iterate, release stuff, iterate. In terms of doing that. So we don't want people to feel as though class balance is done. We just did a cool class balance thing. There was a lot of work put into it. There are a lot of changes. That is iteration. We will look at how that affects it, and then we will iterate on that again. Gundabad will come out, and then after that, we can revisit class balance. So that will be, class balance is something that kind of drifted over the years. The other reason we don't want to do more class balance right now is we're doing a legendary rebalance, and the legendary rebalance is going to drastically affect classes. So doing more class balance work right now before the new legendary system is out doesn't really make sense. Yeah, we wanted to bring certain effects into a single range, but our next class balance essentially is the legendary balance pass because they're all class specific items, if that makes sense. I have to say that the work on housing is Matt. Matt loves doing housing, and he is a big evangelist for it. And so he actually goes out of his way to do cool housing stuff. So you can thank Matt on that one. We love doing housing stuff, but he's really like keeps an eye on it and watches all of the players and what they're saying and like changes. Like I want to change how hooks work. So yeah, when you that like let's give credit where credit is due.
We did recently show some housing updates that ended up not making it into update 30. They're coming in a future update, but no exact ETA to announce. It needs some further iteration, and we need to make sure that we give the team time to do that. But most of that is expected to show up. There was one specific issue where a change might have. We had to decide basically whether you could tilt some areas on small housing hooks, as I understand it, and that was in particular useful during our Halloween events. And so we want to take another look at that and see what the right solution is for that one. So there's a possibility some, but not all of the housing preview work that you saw for Update 30 on Bull Roarer may get out sooner rather than later. But that's all. I remember talking actually just with Matt about that this past week. So
you can tell people are rushing in because some of the questions and stuff. Just quick, yes, we have heard the feedback that people feel that like they would like to be rewarded more for running at higher difficulties. There probably won't be rewards for running at really higher difficulties past rank 3 because those are really for for streamers that want to prove they can do it, or for groups or people that want that capability, but we don't want to lure people into trying to solo at rank 5. So the titles and the extra rewards that I talked about earlier will probably be something that is limited to rank 3. Brawler is heavy. It comes from the dwarves. The dwarves like walking around in heavy armor and punching people. It is a lore piece, and so yeah. Now, will they look like all the other heavy armors, as I talked about before? Hopefully, we're actually doing the concepting and art right now. LI system work will not include bridles, if I understand. You mean for war horses, right? So the attribute stuff and where you hit limits where you no longer need them is a problem with the game that we have to address, and that's a bigger thing than the first pass of the legendary item. We agree that it's an issue. We talked about it a lot, but in order to do that, if we did that first, then it would push legendary items out of the year. And I know players have been looking for a system that isn't as complex as the current system. So we know that there are certain times when you get to a point where I just don't need this stat anymore. And we do want to address it somewhat with legendary, but that solution will come later when we probably want to do a stat revamp of some kind where that will just not happen as much. Let's see.
Any update on the PvP work that is in the works? It said the question is being done. I happen to know the answer to that is the person is currently planning to do work on PvMP later this year. But I don't believe that they've had time in the last couple months to work on it because they're working on a different project right now.
Yeah, so one of the things is like people are like asking about the yellow captain, right? Like that's the kind of thing that once you're talking about specific trees, I would love to talk about it. One of the issues is our class balance obviously languished a bit, and so as we're going through right now, we're trying to get all of the classes to make sure they have a powerful raid thing. And I understand that not all of the trees are there yet, but so bear with us. Like the more powerful, the more the first pass is like, oh my God, we want all the classes to feel like they have a place and they have different areas. Some are good for landscape, some are good for raids, some are good for dungeons. But we realize that like the we're not there when we're talking about specific tree balance. And we'd like to be, but that you know is more, will be more iteration and more balance. We would love to upgrade kinship systems. In fact, we were talking about that. No short-term plans. Right now, we're all in on doing kick-ass Gundabad for you, putting out Brawler, and difficulty stuff.
We have actually had a couple people in Twitch chat asking to see Bombadil back. This is the first time I've seen anyone ask during a chat with Sev to bring Bombadil back. So,
Bombadil.
yeah.
Oh,
that was about a year ago, right? That was
character or the server?
The server, the Bombadil PvP server there. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. Maybe add some extra twists and stuff. The Bombadil server is I like it. It's an event that we can do. It's shorter term. Right now we were concentrating on different kinds of legendary and doing the slow and fast one, and then we'll probably get back to that. It depends if like 2 people are asking for it, maybe not, because it does have a hardware cost. But if we have a good amount of people asking for it, that is something that we could revisit in the future. The hardware cost is really the biggest issue there. We have to shuffle around our resources.
Yeah.
More specific tree stuff. Man, you're really tempting me to go into that, but I'm gonna make a wisdom save and not do it.
Nice.
Maybe someday there'll be a stat squish. I'm not saying no. I know that the systems people have explored it. One of the issues there isn't actually the implementation of the stat switch; it's the testing. Our team is not big enough to recursively test the whole game, and what will end up happening is there's just, even when bigger games do it, all the old content like is in chaos for a bit until they hunt it down and settle it. So you know, I will only do that if we really need to do it, because I could have my entire team testing that for a year and still miss stuff. So we want to be really careful for that. Once we close down servers like Bombadil and we give a hard date, what happens is we've moved the hardware and shuffle it around. So it's not a matter of we're trying to deny you. It's a matter of that like we can't do it.
Yeah.
Someone asked about the transfers off the Dark Worlds, and that tech is being tested and is almost ready. So that should be coming soon. I'll have to look at specifically when, but like really soon, not my usual soon, like really soon. I'll see where we are with that.
Let me put in a request from Facebook. Mark over on Facebook. Can we get streaks of gray in our hair and beards like Cordovans and mine? Is that out of the question? What do you think? Can we ever get gray streaks in our avatars?
I can't have you on stream at all without people trying to simulate you. It's terrible. I will. That is actually good. I don't think that we have. I'm sure that the artist watching will look into that. Yes, as I talked about, block, parry, evade essentially are the exact stats I'm talking about when I was saying that there are stats that you basically max out, and then they late in each iteration of itemization, they kind of become dead, because if you're at the cutting edge of gearing, you've already maxed them out. That is something that we want to address in the future, and maybe even with the legendary item stuff.
Okay.
We always want to hype the game up. Like, that's one of the reasons that EG7 talked about investing into the game, and we talked about, you know, new graphics. The problem is something like new graphics and that kind of initiative just it takes a long time to go through. And EG7 right now has a lot of cool games that they're moving through and juggling. So I would love it to move faster, but it's something that do it.
I'm seeing another comment on Facebook about these kind of fire, frost, lightning essences. I guess that we have it sounds like a bug in them, where they're perhaps doing more damage than intended. So Stefan over on Facebook and the couple of folks who asked on Twitch, we'll follow up on that later this afternoon, see what's going on with that. I think there is a fix already in the works for that I saw in the notes being put together for next week's hot fix, but until that's actually ready to go, I don't really want to talk about it yet.
Yeah. I didn't mean to imply that the stat system would be simplified, only that we would address some of the stats that become that there's no reason to continue going up. So for that comment, because I don't want people concerned that we're going to like completely change things so that it's no longer interesting. I don't, okay. Let's see.
Bra over on YouTube. Could we ever get a world PvP toggle to just sort of choose to open PvP in Lotro?
Probably not. Like making good world PvP is it's an like you could have a whole team doing that. I mean, doing it toggling, obviously we can open it up, but it has different things, and then you have to worry about what if when people with the toggle on and don't have the toggle on try to group, and what happens there, and then can people with the toggle off heal people with the toggle on? We don't have any tech that prevents people. So what you don't want is you don't want like person with the toggle on has 4 healers following them with the toggle off healing them. And so does that mean they can't group? Right? Like that means that we would have to find tech to turn off healing of people with the toggle on and doing that, and then they can't group on the landscape. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff there. Let's see. What else? There's a lot of stuff on stats. Once we start talking about the nitty gritty of stats, it's almost as bad as class balance. So I'm sure that the team has a lot of thoughts on that, and I don't want to say anything that they'll feel backed in the corner on it more than yes, we know that let's see.
There was a bunch of Squee Lotro news or Lord of the Rings news yesterday. Did you hear about that animated series? Do you have a comment on it?
So I thought it was a series, but some of the
oh yeah, no, a movie, right? It's just an animated movie.
They were saying that it's going to be a movie. I know. I mean, right? Like, is it going to be like the Rankin Bass Lord of the Rings, where I still sing?
It can't be, right? They're not going to do Roto. Oh gosh, I'm excited myself. That's my comment. I'm excited myself.
All the songs stick with me. Like I can still sing "Where There's a Whip."
The greatest adventure. Yeah, exactly.
And then they finally did Return of the King, but they did it in that 70s style with wizards, and so I have no idea what it's going to be like. But like, one thing is that WB, they do great animated stuff.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool news.
Really good. So I'm excited about that and the Amazon stuff.
Yeah.
The launcher, there was an option to keep us logged in for 8 hours for 64-bit. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, we did have to turn off the stay logged in for 8 hours option. Unfortunately, it was just causing too many problems for people being able to relog in under certain conditions. So.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, no, that unfortunately, because there were problems with it, that probably won't come back. I apologize. I know that sometimes it's really handy. I am not sure. Sorry. Someone went into Jeff Bezos in a convoy armored trucks, and that's probably
Yeah.
going. Let's grab some more stuff from Facebook or other.
Yeah, let me take a look. Not really seeing. I've a couple of suggestions over on Facebook about fixing Bjorning Bear form, and a few other kind of emote-related questions there. Would we be open to make this one from YouTube, from Julian? Would we be open to making more lower-level zones like Wildwood?
Sure. I mean, Wildwood seemed popular, and we'd love to revisit stuff like that. If we find areas that we couldn't visit that will help make a richer map, that is something that we could definitely do in the future.
Has there been any more discussion on river hobbits?
Yes, just not for good and bad.
Yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that will probably be coming at some point, which will be cool.
Yeah. This one from John over on YouTube. Are essences making a comeback in Update 30? I think maybe we could even go into that a little bit wider. I think essences are kind of that sort of system is something that we're leaning into a bit, right?
Yeah. One of the nice things is that we'd like to do more with the Essence system. We'd like to give them more capabilities. We want to add the capability of having unique essences that you can only slot one of. We want to have special essences and do a lot with that system. Whether we'll be able to actually do that for 30 is probably not a lot of it, because we're already deep into the itemization, and quite frankly, the legendary item system is taking a lot of those resources. But after that, we definitely have invested in the Essence tech to be able to do cool new things, and so we should be able to do that. Let's see, Self-Shire, that's a cool thing to bring up on the forums so that the devs know that that's something that people want.
Speaking of level scaling, this one comes from Dakari over on Twitch. What if we took the landscape thing for instances? Is that something we could ever do in the future? So higher level characters could be challenged in lower level, let's say, quests.
No, that really wouldn't work, because the range of that difficulty is too shallow in order to do that. Doing stuff where you do level scaling requires the lower end systems to be mathematically balanced to take that into account. In other words, the game almost has to be built, or in this case, rebuilt for that. A lot of that content was hand tuned to the stats, and so what ends up happening is that we would have to go with the skirmish system. And as people have seen, with the problem with the skirmish system, the reason that we don't continue doing that is that the skirmish system uses the difficulty code in order to get different level bands, but then you can't also, on top of that, determine how difficult you want each skirmish to be. So the skirmishes tend to be too easy, and if we make any adjustments, if we don't go specifically back and change all the skirmishes by hand, they lose relevance, because they just become too easy. And because of that multifaceted difficulty would require us to rebuild basically how the game statting and leveling works from the ground up, it is something that we would need to be like, this will completely revitalize the game. So one of the things about the landscape difficulty and the difficulty tiers for instances is those are our ways to address that. And they have two different reasons. And part of it is what I already talked about, in that you don't want landscape difficulty tech to be used in instances, because you want everyone to agree to the same difficulty.
I can speak to the will we get a forum website update that would have a more responsive mobile version. Someday that would, in the relatively near future, that is something I think we'll be looking at. You know, we've talked several times over in recent years about moving to vBulletin Cloud, that kind of thing. I think some of that may be being pushed forward here. We don't have a timeline, may not be a while yet, but I do think that will happen at some point here in our future.
Is there a, I don't know why my screen has the bar across it. I apologize.
updating the website has been on my sort of to-do list for a while, and it looks like we may have an opportunity there someday in the relatively near future. So,
Any plans to develop ranked PvMP arenas? That would be a thing. Probably not in the short term, because once you do ranking, there's a whole nother set of exploits and matchmaking that we have no code for. Like, we don't have really matchmaking code that would be robust enough to support that without it being easy to exploit or trade. I mean, there's already trading going on, right? And so that requires a giant amount of tech. I thank you for thanking us. I appreciate the kind words. We probably won't do virtue systems bound to all characters on the server.
I wanted to go back quickly. I saw a couple of reactions to our essence question and talk about some concerns about, okay, but the essence grind. Though. I do think that part of the leaning into maybe the system of essences is also part of the rework that we're doing for legendary items and the itemization grind in general. So,
sure. Yeah. Like, one of the things is that I want new content to be exciting because there's lots of new rewards for it. I don't want them to feel like a grind, but I will say this. A lot of times when I know that people don't want to feel like things are a grind, but I also am more afraid of people being like, I'd like to play the game, but I have nothing to do. That scares me more. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of rewards so that people have a reason to actually play the content without being grindy, and finding it's kind of interesting because finding the middle ground is a tightrope walk, but also people have different things that they want. So there are some players that want a reason to play certain areas a lot more than other players. They're like, all right, I'm done with this area. I kind of want to move on. But this person's like, I'd love to play in this area more, but I have nothing to do. So not only is it like a rope that you kind of want to walk between, but that rope is different for a wide range of players. It's actually a range that you go, and you have to be careful because when you move towards pleasing these players, other players are less pleased. So. Do
you want to tackle this question from Julian over on YouTube? Hearing about all the LI work that's coming, should I still be doing anything with my crystals and scrolls of empowerment? Will they still be needed in the future here?
So right now, one of the things we want to make sure is that everybody who's worked hard on their LIs feels rewarded in that when we move to the new system, their old LI translates and fills up the new system so that translates well. So what will happen though is that those items will more likely be used for the LIs that you want to translate over and not directly used in the new LI system, is where we're currently at. But as we go forward and get more into the nitty-gritty details of how things move over, we'll have more news we'll have more official news on that. Okay.
Lyron, I cannot commit us to a class balance discussion stream without speaking to the class team.
Right.
Sorry. I know that you'd like to see it. It sounds like a cool idea, but I know that they're awful busy, and some of them are a little shy to be on camera as well. So we'll have to see about that.
Yeah.
But maybe there's something we can do there.
The other thing too is this just isn't a good format for class balance. Class balance has to do with a lot of math and a lot of kind of theory crafting, and a form where you only have 255 characters or whatever it is in order to comment on that. Then people are trying to do multiple like kind of comments and they get deep. That's better for the forum where it's not, this is all transient. If they did it here and there were good ideas, they would have to watch through the stream and write them down rather than being able to reference them later. So this is a terrible forum for it, even though I know that getting direct feedback from people is exciting and I like it too. One of the things speaking of direct feedback, is one of the things that I've been talking about with Cordovan, is I kind of like to do a switch up stream. Right now we do Ask Me Anything. I kind of want to try and ask you anything. I don't know if it'll work. Maybe it'll be a disaster. But I want to do is that we have questions and we ask questions of the players, and then you type your answers into chat. And we take the ones that we like or the ones that we find most relevant and kind of look at them and discuss them a little bit in order to get more player feedback, because we always want to try to get more player feedback. And this is great because I get a lot of value from the questions that you're answering, but doing something where we're asking questions, some deep, some less so. The only problem is that it has to be kind of when we ask, if we ask something, just answer once. Like if we said, for instance, what class probably needs the most work? I know that people are going to want to put in like long arguments of like why their class needs the most work or why this class. And that's something that if we tried to do an Ask You Anything, it would be a little bit, that wouldn't work. So it would have to be something, some of the questions will be light, some of the questions will kind of be deep. But we kind of want to hear from you for a lot of this stuff. And it's one of the things that we might try in the future, maybe even the next stream. I think it would be interesting to hear from you.
Yeah.
I
know, speaking of next streams, we actually are quickly running out of time here. We've got the Tolkien professor up here in a little bit. For official streams, I also did want to call out that Scenario's going to be stopping by next Wednesday on Twitch. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern. He's going to be wandering through a landscape, doing a little bit of commentary on that. Next Friday, we'll certainly be showing off some of the Update 30 Blood of Azog content here. And then we do have a full schedule throughout the weekend. A quick couple of community notes for those of you watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Shirefest is this weekend. That's happening over on Crick Hollow. I can get all the details and everything in the Lotro Beacon, which will be published later this afternoon on lotro.com. We've got, actually a pretty active community weekend here in terms of concerts and events and other things. So I want to make sure that if you want to pay attention to any of that stuff, maybe check out the Lotro Beacon later this afternoon. There's going to be a bunch of links to that. Since we are almost out of time, let's do any kind of final questions. Anything you want to answer here, Sev, that you've been seeing before we call it?
There's so many. Why don't you pick something, because there's too many for the last few minutes.
Okay, let's see.
I know that we started late because of me, so I have
only a few minutes though. It was actually not too bad. Midsummer is next week. We don't need that to be the last question though. I'm not seeing an immediate question that's popping out at me. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to talk about. No, can't answer that question.
New hobbies is something we've discussed, but I have nothing to announce.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we really are pretty much out of time here anyway. So why don't we do this and call it a show? Thanks, Sev, for joining us here. We're gonna have you back, sooner rather than later. So this isn't everyone's only chance to talk to you here. We'll have you back in something like a month or something like that, and to stop by the stream again and do some Q&A with us. So thanks very much for taking time out of your noon hour here, Sev, and thanks everyone for watching.
Awesome. Thanks everybody.